source, we've spoken about DeepSeek, being developed that claim to use less in the way of resources. Is it possible that as we continue to develop new and more advanced AI models, these sustainability problems could disappear or at least substantially reduce? Patrick, you're nodding.
Yeah, I'm optimistic about it.
Yeah.
I think everything is progressing, including components, are progressing. So where we use energy. So I think that's a message, in fact, to all these developers. You must also be creative, not only for LLMs, but also to optimize the way they will be operating in terms of energy. And so I think it's just at the beginning of this industry, and you have billions being invested. So and all these engineers, I'm sure they will find solutions. So I'm optimistic at that point.
I think we should think a little bit about rebound effects. So I think that we wrote a paper, published it last week, about Jevons paradox in AI. So what we're seeing is more powerful GPUs, you can train bigger models for longer, and yet energy use is rising. People are using bigger, more computationally intensive models for things that they used to do with good old-fashioned AI, random forest, et cetera. And so I think that the human component is actually non-negligible, because yes, sure, GPUs are more efficient, but then people are using them more. And so how is this rebound effect going to continue, propagating? Are we going to continue just snowballing in the energy use? Because actually the IEA, I think, Lawrence Berkeley published a report where they project up to 12% of US energy being used for data centers in the next couple of years. Like, how do we, well, I mean, it's the high point, right?
It's very hype today, all that.
Right, but exactly. But which way is it going to go? And how do we try to mitigate that without contributing to it?
Today, 2 years ago, it was hydrogen. Today, it's AI.
Crypto, yeah, we had crypto in the
Let's take this question from Ryan McDonald, senior editor at the Globe and Mail in Canada.
Data centers want their power to always be on, and I hope always to be carbon free. They also want power right now, not in 10 years. Nuclear doesn't work that way, and we've seen a lot of interest from tech companies around the nuclear issue. It's slow and is often regulated itself. So I'm wondering, in the meantime, should we be moving to look at sustainable focused regulation of AI to incentivize further improvements in the efficiency of how these data centers operate, and even the efficiency of the software itself to reduce this power demand?
Interesting question. I see Sasha nodding away. Kate, what do you think?
Very interesting questions. We have to look at the way AI innovation is being driven in different parts of the world, because it's totally different. In the US, big tech. In Europe, is data-driven regulations that are regulatory-driven. If you think about things like GDPR, the EU AI Act. In China, for example, the government has been investing a lot in developing the local industry. But if you look at places like Africa, it's all bottom-up innovation. And I worry that if we try to impose regulations too early, specifically in places that haven't been able to really capitalize, really start their journey, really support the local innovation ecosystem to develop itself, we might get into a point where we stifle innovation and create a gap that's impossible to close.
But conversely, if we do regulate in places like the US or Europe, then we can help make sustainability part of the conversation that's already ongoing and well developed, right? Because the EU AI Act didn't have any sustainability enforcing clauses. It talked about data, but there was nothing about, for example, like the energy mix or even efficiency, right? Like how efficient a model has to be deployed, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that there are some like nudges that can be done already at the European level and the American level, Canadian maybe, where we kind of nudge things in the right direction with sustainability and efficiency.
Skeptical?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm, I think if regulation is too different all across the globe, essentially we're creating more complexity that will not help sustainability, because interoperability is not going to be there anymore. So I think we're too early, but we need to make sure that customer data are properly managed. That's for sure. There is no doubt about that. We need to make sure that everybody really is ethical about leveraging AI, and I think sustainability is a part of that ethical compass that everybody has to develop. But at the same time, if we're having this micro-regulation everywhere, I'm not sure this is going to happen.
And I'm afraid that Europe will regulate and the US will not.
Well, yeah.
That will be the reality of our world. So I don't like too much the question, because at the end, we might regulate here. We are already quite regulated. And, I'm not sure the US administration, which is just taking on board, will regulate the use of energy for AI. I think I
On the
listened
contrary.
to the contrary, in fact, during the speech of the president. So that's why I don't think the solution is there for a transitory period. In fact, the question is, how do we manage this transitory period?
Right. And when you say the solution isn't there, if there was broad agreement on regulation, would that make any difference?
Yeah, but we did not
It's not
manage
going to happen.
sustainability. Unfortunately, we are dreaming about a broad agreement. We did not manage to get it.
I mean, we showed earlier in the session the agreement made in 2015. This was obviously about climate change and the warming planet. Do you think there could be a similar type agreement when it comes to AI?
I think it would take that, honestly, because AI does transcend borders, because, you know, a data center could be in one country and the users in another and the developers in a third. So we have to be doing, but that is very hard. I agree. But I think that that's the only way to do it well.
The question is not to have an agreement, is to apply it.
Also.
And
Yeah.
today,
Well,
what the global south countries observe is that you have one region of the world which is applying the 2015 agreement, which is Europe. Other parts of the world do not apply it. So it's fact, having an agreement which on the way, it's a question of, it's super complex to have a global regulation of the planet. And honestly, when you see the geopolitics today, we are see more fracturation than unity on this type of things. And it's a question of competition, economic war, economic competition.
And I mean, in the end, isn't that going to reign out, Alexander, that economic competition? Some people might regulate and others will innovate, to use the phrase, and get ahead.
Well, I think every kind of restriction, to some extent, also fosters innovation, because you have to work also on, you know, finding solutions that anyhow keep you in a competitive landscape. But anyhow, I think AI manifests that there is this is a very global phenomenon, and I don't have a solution, to be honest, but I do believe that, you know, cutting it in pieces, also regionally cutting it in pieces, I don't think that is going to help a lot.
Thank you very much to all of you. Unless you wanted a final word there,
I was
Kate, on
going
it.
to say scarcity is the mother of innovation. And I think we will see that with AI over the next couple of years.
Well, it's a good point on which to end this particular session. Huge thank you to the four of you for joining us for this session. Let's give them a round of applause. If you just stay put just for 1 second, because we're going to be back in a few minutes' time. There's no rest or no peace for the wicked, as they say, to hear Jean-Noël Barrot, Minister for Europe and Foreign Affairs of Europe, in conversation with Daron Acemoglu, Nobel Laureate in Economics and Institute Professor of Economics at MIT. And to make sure you don't go anywhere, we've got a real treat for you. The second of our Spotlight films today, this time looking at AI and democracy with Audrey Tang, Senior Fellow at the Project Liberty Institute. See you in a minute.
Okay. Good.
Let's explore a question I hear all the time. My answer is no. If we design AI to serve collective intelligence rather than just top-down interests, AI can strengthen democracy by amplifying inclusive participation, not undermining it. In Taiwan, we've used open source platforms like Polis, a deliberative digital space enabling thousands to shape policy. Everything from Uber regulation to banning deepfake ads. The results is rich dialogue, less polarization, and legitimate public policy outcomes that truly reflects the people's will. This is democracy with AI, not versus AI. And today, we're scaling this model to the global dialogues. It's a platform where thousands of participants from more than 60 countries can deliberate regularly on AI governance. My journey from civic hacker to government minister taught me the power of open tools, open data, and collaborative code. One of the core strategies in Taiwan is what we call radical transparency. We share meeting records, budgets, and crucial data openly like mask availability during COVID. This fosters timely, reliable information and sustained trust. Transparency dispels rumors and aligns stakeholders around shared facts. I truly encourage every government out there, bring in your civic hackers, your youth, your civil society, and build policy together. Imagine worldwide collective input, helping shape international AI guidelines and frontline innovation. Some worry that too much transparency leads to chaos or undermines official authority. But in truth, secrecy can remain for sensitive matters, while the broader policy process grows more robust when it's out in the open. You diffuse rumors before they spark major divides. Our approach is humor over rumor. In Taiwan, if somebody spreads a hoax, we counter that with a playful, viral, mimetic clarification. No takedowns, no censorship. This is how we foster media competence, not just media literacy. And I call this model plurality, fostering collaborative diversity rather than uniformity. If you want AI to respect multiple viewpoints, design it that way from the start. If we keep sparking cross-border, cross-cultural deliberations and form a new global governance, small countries like Taiwan have big lessons to share. However, this positive outcome is not guaranteed. It depends on us, our readiness to shape AI and investing in plurality. We need to insist that AI amplifies what's best in us. We want to see an AI future that sees data as a shared resource and foster inclusion, not exclusion. Let's co-create an AI world that invests in our communities, ensure data remains the common good, and helps democracies thrive. Merci beaucoup, and let's free the future together.
Hello again, and welcome back to the final session of Project Syndicate here at the AI Action Summit. It's been an incredibly fascinating and inspiring afternoon here at the Grand Palais, and we might just have saved the best until last, although it's been pretty good up until now. In a minute, we'll be hearing from, in fact, I might already be able to hear them, from Jean-Noël Barrot, Minister of Europe and Foreign Affairs here in France, and Darren Acemoglu, one of the most recent winners of the Nobel Prize in Economics. But first, let's remind ourselves of why we have this truly exceptional concentration of power and talent here in Paris.
Mitigating the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority, alongside other societal scale risks such as pandemics and nuclear war.
Very welcome. I'm delighted to be joined by Jean-Noël Barrot and Darren Acemoglu here for what we call a fireside chat. We don't need a fire, it's warm enough in here, of course. And I will let the two of you take it away, as they say, but just to sort of kick things off, is this a watershed moment, do you think, Jean-Noël? Is it a big moment when it comes to the future of AI?
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you to Project Syndicate. It's actually a very humbling moment for me because Darren has played a very important role in my professional career. 10 years ago, I was a very junior professor at MIT Sloan School of Management, and I was visiting a very senior professor at the MIT economics department, Daron Acemoglu, who had just published a seminal paper on the propagation of shocks through production networks. And my most popular paper ever as a researcher is a second derivative of this seminal paper of Daron Acemoglu. But then, of course, I got lost and I got into politics and dealing with digital. That was my first mission in the French government, and now with foreign affairs. And indeed, I think we're living an important moment, and it's clearly an important moment for France because on the side, if I may say, of this global conversation that we're having on AI, bringing together in Paris some of the brightest minds in the world, it's also an important moment for France because we're announcing north of 100 billion euros investments in the coming years in our country, which is somewhat of the payoff of the policies that have been undertaken over the past 7 years under the impulse of President Macron to make this country as attractive as possible for the development of AI technology.
What do you make of that announcement, first of all?
Well, first of all, you know, it was clear even then Jean-Noël was going to high places. So, well, I think the announcement is great, and we are at a watershed moment. Not to panic, not to go excessively into a mode of doing something, but every moment right now is a watershed moment because I think we do need a better direction for AI that starts with infrastructure, that starts with better regulation, but I think it's ultimately about the right type of AI investments that can bring higher productivity for workers, better control of information for citizens and consumers, and more greater ability for all of us to understand the world, to process information, and to take control of our data and our choices. That's not, unfortunately, where we're going right now.
What are your biggest sort of concerns at this moment?
More business as usual with the very, very large companies, with the very, very large models, centralizing data and pushing us towards models that at least are aspiring to take control of our lives, B, to automate work excessively without providing better tools for workers, and C, more potentially manipulative activities via digital advertising and other things. I'm not saying those are the only things that are possible. Quite the contrary, there are many other things we can do, and some of them may come out from the foundation model. Some of them may come out from the current investments that we have in Europe or in the United States. But I think the direction of travel is concerning.
Right.
If I may jump in, one of your major contributions as a researcher was to demonstrate first theoretically and then more empirically that technical change is directed and that there is no such thing as technological progress that would spontaneously provide for the best or sort of go down the path of maximizing welfare. And there may be room for public intervention to sort of shift the direction of the technology in the direction that you were stating. Of course, it's a bit more intimidating when you consider the amounts invested in AI, the size of the companies developing those models. So where should we look for relevant policy intervention when it comes to giving AI the right direction?
Well, that's such a big topic. Thank you so much for bringing it so clearly, Jean-Noël. But absolutely, I think there are two conceits that really shape our discussion right now. One is a very deep techno-optimism that whatever we do with technology, as long as we innovate, everybody's going to benefit. The other one is a technological determinism, that there is one direction for AI that everybody should follow. And once you sort of give up these two conceits, you come to the real power of technology. I have no doubt technology is an amazing force, which we have sometimes used for great things, improving our health, comfort, prosperity over the last 300 years. But we can also misuse technology, and its direction need not be always the optimal thing. But how do we change things. It's a very large conversation because we have many instruments. But let me tell you what I think will get us there. I don't know how to get to this point, but if we reach this point, I think we will have solved the problem. If in, say, 2 years' time, 80% of AI researchers go to their offices, to their companies and say, my focus is to work on technologies that are going to help workers, that are going to empower citizens to control their own information and their own data, we're done. That's the... So it's the direction of where the AI tech industry needs to be. Of course, we're not going to get there easily because financial incentives, ideological issues, power are all pushing against that. But I think we can get there. It's a change of norms. It's a change of institutions, change of regulations, some fiscal changes about getting rid of some tax incentives that really mess things up. We can get there, but it's going to be a slow process.
Do you think there is the political will to do that? You've announced this huge amount of money, and we spoke earlier about governments having to harness some of the investment to balance out the private sector. But is the political will there in terms of leadership to actually achieve or at least move towards what Darren has just outlined?
Well, I think that policymakers, what they would like to see AI do is to treat cancer, to treat rare diseases, to help avoid the consequences of floods and fires, and to facilitate or to bridge the digital divide and facilitate access of our co-citizens to public services and so on. But there is also this feeling that because the companies are so large, because the investments are so massive, that it's not clear how you're going to influence that. And I'd say that one thing we've learned from the past wave of technology here in Europe, where we had not developed sort of world-class social networks or marketplaces, is that traditional competition policy has not been successful in deterring unfair commercial practices and avoiding the abuse of dominant positions. Why? Well, because these positions that they get consolidated so fast that even though you can expose through the agencies that are in charge of enforcing competition, identify those abuses and even sanction them, this happens so late down the road that the economic benefits have been fully drawn and all competition has gone. And whether it's self-preferencing, cross-selling, predatory acquisitions, we've seen this happening in the field of cloud, in the field of social networks. And we've actually started to take action in Europe by designing a new policy. It's called the Digital Markets Act that came into force in 2022. And that takes an opposite sort of stance from traditional competition policy, but by stating that certain behaviors are forbidden ex ante. So it's basically not the competition agency that's going to check and enforce ex post, but it is forbidden ex ante because of the speed at which those positions can be formed. Of course, this is a brand new regulation. There are investigations ongoing, and we'll see how far we can go. But I'm not sure that even those rules will be sufficient, and that's why part of this summit is also promoting, as far as AI is concerned, open source and open environments as a norm, because this can natively, so to speak, organically prevent the foreclosure of markets and the formation of dominant positions.
Well, and not to oversimplify what has been discussed here and earlier this afternoon, but this idea of regulation to make it open, fair, to ensure that it is for the common good, some of our panelists here have said, but please remember, companies have to make profits. Companies want to innovate, and sometimes regulation can, yes, aid, but it can also stultify. I mean, how do you...
100%, 100%. Europe needs to be an innovator in AI. You cannot just be a regulator. But what Jean-Noël emphasizes is so important. There is one kind of regulation that pretty much all economists agree is good, is antitrust. Prevent monopolization of markets. The world and Silicon Valley still thinks of itself as those scrappy innovators working in garages, disrupting established businesses. Well, it is the most concentrated industry in the world. And it has become like this not just because of amazing innovation. Yes, Google is an amazing innovator, not just because there is some economics of data or networks that says big is better. Yes, there is some of that. But it's because the United States has completely failed to enforce antitrust. These companies have also grown very mightily because they have acquired their rivals. They have acquired a lot of startups. They've created an ecosystem where if you're a small company, the best thing you can do is try to do something compatible with one of them so that they acquire you. So it has created a very monopolistic market, which is not good. It's especially not good if you need a redirection, something better, because monopolists are going to pursue their existing business model.
Jean-Nouveau, I mean, how do you deal with that potential? I mean, we talked about DeepSeek and perhaps, how can I put it delicately, President Trump's slightly muted response. Oh, hey, if we take it at face value, the Chinese have come up with something that was cheaper to make and could be very effective. Or does that give you hope that other parts of the world could do the same without the sort of monopoly and resource that America has?
Yes, it does, because it validates the approach according to which opening environments is conducive to more innovation and to improvements of in the quality of the systems, and also makes them cheaper to build, because you build on the shore, or you stand on the shoulders of giants, and that's the way that knowledge gets sort of improved from the accumulation, or both the accumulation and the competition between innovators. But again, one thing that that we need to figure out is how the public authorities can influence the direction when, of course, private actors are pouring a lot of money in the sector. And I think one of the important aspects of what public authorities should do is the governance of data, because the whole sector that Daron was describing a minute ago has been thriving on somewhat of a sort of a free and ungoverned access to data. And now that we're reaching the sort of the era of generative AI, where models, in order to be very useful and accurate, are going to need to resort to clean and very precise data, I think that public authorities can step back in and say, well, I'm going to release data sets on cancer patients because I want AI to be developed for treating cancer. And if I'm going to, if I want to have AI developed to lower the carbon emissions of housing, then I'm going to release a data set on housing. And this intuition is behind the foundation that is going to be announced today, Current AI, that is going to bring together philanthropic foundations to pour the money, public authorities that's going to provide the data, and companies that are going to build the models out of this data.
Well, yes.
Yeah, if I can add, I mean, I think DeepSeek is very, very interesting because it's a shock to the system. It shows, first of all, that it is possible to do innovation, very, very impactful innovation, when you are not at the center of all of the money, all of the venture capital in Silicon Valley. It also shows that, emphasizing our earlier discussion of techno-determinism, that the directions that are being tried at the moment in the biggest companies may not be the only ones. Every company before DeepSeek in the AI space, the big companies, not small ones, of course, are an exception, but they believed in scale is all you need, which is, you build bigger and bigger models, you throw in bigger and bigger data, and that's how we're going to get to better and better models. Well, DeepSeek, actually, by the way, is not doing like crazy innovation. They haven't developed a new method, and they are themselves an AGI company, but they show you can do it on a smaller scale. And very interestingly, they are using methods like the mixture of experts models that take us a little bit closer to domain-specific models, which you were discussing in the previous panel. They're much better environmentally. They're going to be much more effective in giving us reliable information that can be used by workers or by citizens for a specific purpose. But again, those are now sort of put aside. So I think it's a really wonderful thing. And data markets and data ownership, I think those are going to be much more interesting when we go actually to these domain-specific models, because they are also synergistic. Creating the right kind of data market is going to be very synergistic for generating high-quality data for these domain-specific models.
Well, on that positive, optimistic note, let me thank both of you, gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us. Let's give them a round of applause. And I have a big announcement to make. Well, it's not really my announcement, but to say that at 5:30, so you've got time, President Emmanuel Macron is going to be addressing the conference at NEF. And I hope you know exactly where that is. And if not, follow this man here. Thank you to both of you. And thanks also to the team behind all of this, Project Syndicate, there they are, and High Impact, who have worked so hard to make today's event such a success. The guests have been incredible, and so have you, the audience, and particularly to our final panelists. I'm Jo Coburn, and this has been the AI Action Summit, brought to you by Project Syndicate. Thank you.
Thank you.